All right. Okay, so if you watched or if you haven't watched the video on how to hints for a better exam, you probably saw, or if not, here you go. Digestion and absorption is one of the more common ERQ questions for paper 2. So I wanted to go over digestion as a whole. So starting with a diagram. It's not likely that you'll have to create a diagram, but I could be wrong. But it's still important that we kind of go over some of the basics. So we have, if you want to, I will kind of pause before each one. So if you want to kind of guess what it is before I give you the answer and you want to kind of study while you're also listening, go for it. So this baby boy right here is, what is it? Correct, it's the mouth. Whoa. And what is the mouth used for? Like, what is its function? Chewing. So you say chewing, or like mechanical digestion. Whoa, so cool. All right, this little guy right here, let's see if you remember what he is. I shouldn't gender these, but. All right, this is the salivary glands. Wow, congrats, good job. I can't believe you remembered. Salivary glands, you can say synthesize and secrete. What do they secrete? Really, only one you need to know is salivary amylase. Whoa, good job. All right, next one. This guy, this little green lady. It is the esophagus. Oh my gosh, so good. So proud of you. Okay, esophagus. This is track that the food goes down. Food moves to stomach. This is also where we have what kind of tissue? We have muscles. Muscles. So muscles move the food to the stomach through peristalsis. I have no idea if I'm spelling that right. Whatever. Spelling doesn't count. Okay, we're scientists here. Peristalsis. And remember, peristalsis is it's involuntary movement of muscles that sends the food one way. Okay, cool. Next one is this purple guy. What is the purple guy? The purple guy is liver. Oh my gosh, you're so great at this. Liver, what's the function of the liver? It produces bile. And bile is important for lipid digestion. Oh my gosh, so smart. Okay, this guy, this non-binary individual is, oh my gosh, it's the stomach. Yes. Stomach. So the stomach is involved with, there's some digestion in the stomach. So there's some chemical digestion. This is where some proteins get digested. Proteins. And then there's also like churning of food. Again, using peristalsis. And this is mechanical digestion. The stomach, in terms of like acidity, the stomach is, would you say it's acidic, basic, neutral? It is acidic. Oh my gosh, so smart. Yes. The stomach is very acidic. It's got them juices that, again, kind of help with digestion. And then we have this little kind of plurple guy. Very important. I'm going to draw a line. This is our pancreas. Very good. Pancreas is very important. It's going to synthesize and secrete pancreatic enzymes, which will help break down and digest food. So the pancreas, we're going to talk about what enzymes are made in the pancreas, but we'll talk about that in a second. But you need to make sure that you understand that most of the enzymes, the majority of the enzymes, are going to be coming from the pancreas. Oh, we forgot. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about our little boy over here. Okay, this guy, the little guy underneath the liver, what is he? He is the gallbladder. And what does the gallbladder do? Oh my gosh, so smart. Yes, it is going to store the bile. That's why it's underneath the liver. So the bile, I didn't draw it on this picture, but there's a duct that goes from the from the gallbladder, and it kind of connects to the, there's another duct that connects from the pancreas, and then it goes into the small intestine, because the small intestine is where, I kind of gave it away, but small intestine, this pink individual, this is where majority of digestion and absorption. And let's be clear, digestion and absorption are not the same thing, friends. Digestion is the breakdown of the molecules. We're breaking the big macromolecules up into monomers, okay? Absorption is when those monomers get absorbed into the tissue and into the bloodstream so that they can go throughout the body and it can be used by the body, okay? So digestion and absorption happen in the small intestine. And then we have this big individual, which is our large intestine. Large intestine is basically responsible for, it absorbs a lot of the water, and kind of gets, there's some more absorption, but a lot less, and it basically is producing the waste. So, say absorbing water, absorb water. Stool produced. And then we have the rectum, which is right here. Rectum, which is eventually going to release stool. Okay. So, moving on, we have enzymes. So, starting with, actually I didn't color it. Ooh, so let's start with this guy. So we kind of already went over it, but the salivary glands, if I could spell, that would be great. Salivary glands produce salivary amylase. Okay, and salivary amylase, it takes the starch and breaks it down into, what does it break it down into? Oh my gosh, yes, maltose, very good. Maltose, so you need to know all of that fun stuff. You need to know like the enzymes, and you need to know how, like what it breaks the larger molecule and then the smaller molecule. So salivary glands, and then other enzymes you have to know about are in the next one. You need to know about the stomach. So remember the stomach, we talked about that's where protein synthesis protein digestion begins in the stomach with proteases. Okay, gotta make sure I'm spelling it right. So you don't need to know like the specific proteases, but proteases are gonna break down proteins into polypeptides. Oh my gosh. And then also, remember, this isn't necessarily an enzyme, but remember the stomach is very acidic, so we also have stomach acids in the stomach too. And remember, stomach is where churning happens, so there's some mechanical digestion as well. The next thing, again, not really an enzyme, but still important to know, the liver is producing bile, or bile salts, you could say. Bile salts help with the emulsification of lipids. Okay. And then the big one that we all know and love, that was terrible, is the pancreas. So pancreas is, I think it's this color. Okay, so pancreas. All right, so we need to know about, technically, there are 4 I'm going to list. We don't talk about the last one a whole lot, but we definitely need to know amylase, pancreatic amylase, which basically does the same thing as the salivary amylase. It is going to further digest starch, or it's going to digest the starch that wasn't initially digested in the mouth. And it digests it to maltose. Then we have endopeptidases. Endopeptidase. Okay, endopeptidase is going to break down the peptides into their amino acids. Peptides into amino acids. And then, oh, we forgot lipase. So lipase, just like the name suggests, it's going to break down the triglycerides. Become fatty acids. Fatty acids. And then this one, probably not going to be mentioned, but you know, we've talked about all the other macromolecules, so we might as well talk about nuclease, which is going to break down DNA or RNA into its individual nucleosides. Nucleus. Okay. All right, that's the pancreas. Lots of important buddies. And then the small intestine, you don't super need to know this because the small intestine is mostly where the digestion occurs. But there are small intestine. Hold on, I gotta write this. So there are some membrane-bound enzymes. So enzymes that are within the membrane of the cells that line the small intestine. So for example, maltase, which is going to break down the maltose, is a membrane-bound enzyme in the small intestine. So there are some enzymes that are just going to further break down some of those disaccharides into monosaccharides, or it's mostly sugars for the digestion of sugars. So there you go. Definitely make sure you know the pancreas, and you understand these three, because they will expect you, if there's a question about digestion, they might ask, I've seen questions where they ask about 2 specific enzymes in the small intestine, or, you know, they might specifically ask you, you know, how are proteins digested? And you'll have to talk about, you know, endopeptidase and the proteases. They may ask you how starch is digested, so you need to know about salivary amylase and pancreatic amylase. Okay, so you need to know those. This is just, I feel like you can figure this out, because I just want to, just for time's sake, I'll quickly write the answers. But just because of time, I don't want this to go on forever. I will just kind of go through. These are pictures of the small intestine. If you were to like cut it, more likely than not, you will have, if anything, you may have a multiple choice question. So we have the mucosa, the submucosa, you have circular, smooth muscle, then you have longitudinal, smooth, and then you also, I didn't draw it, but the empty space or the white space this is the lumen. And then we have the serosa. Okay. This is a specific picture of a villi and up close and personal. So again, the most important that we talk about is you need to know, like, these are the capillaries. Okay, so most of the molecules are going to be absorbed into the villi and then into the capillaries, with the one exception to that are the lipids. The lipids get absorbed into the lacteal. Okay, or I should say these are the fatty acids. Fatty acids absorbed. Okay, I'll quickly write these. We have the villi have microvilli, and the microvilli again just increase surface area. We have the epithelial cells, which are the cells that line the outside of the small intestine, or I should say that outline the villi, so epithelial cells. In between the epithelial cells, you have these globulate cells, globate cells, and these secrete mucus to keep the surface moist. Okay, here's where it gets good. So again, digestion is the breakdown of the molecules. The molecules, once they're broken down, they need to be absorbed into the small intestine, into the epithelial cells of the villi, and then they get absorbed either into the capillaries or the lacteals. Okay, so starting off, you need to know glucose, or also galactose. Okay, these get absorbed into the epithelial cells of the villi. They are co-transported, which is just, they get co-transported with sodium. You don't super need to know that. It's active transport, okay? For all intents and purposes, active transport, okay? And then they get absorbed into the capillaries or lacteals. Happens via facilitated diffusion. Okay? So active transport into the villi, like into the inside of the villi, to get into the capillaries, facilitated diffusion. Okay? Next, any other sugars? Including fructose. We have facilitated, I'm just going to put FD for facilitated diffusion. And then absorption into the capillaries, I should put caps. I'm going to put cap because it's capillaries. This one is just simple diffusion into cap. Okay. Amino acids and peptides. We have active transport or co-transport. And then we have simple diffusion into capillaries. Okay. And then we have fatty acids. Remember, fatty acids is these are simple diffusion into the villi. And then it's also simple diffusion, but it's into lacteals. Okay. All right. So how do we put this all together? Okay. Last thing. So if we had to break this down and write a beautiful little, well, not little, but if we had to write, a 7 or 8 mark question, let's talk about ingestion, digestion, and absorption of starch. So make sure if they ask about all 3 of these things, go in order, okay? Ingestion is like going into the mouth. How do we ingest it, okay? So we put it in our mouth, right? And we can say once we eat it, right? We put it in our mouth, the starch goes in our mouth, and we have, in the mouth there's going to be mechanical digestion that has to do with the grinding of the teeth, right? And then there's also going to be salivary amylase that's secreted by salivary glands. That's going to initiate that starch breakdown. So to kind of help you out, I already have this written out. Just for... Okay, so, and I'll post this, I'll add this, okay? Don't freak out. So, first step, if we wanted to explain what's going on with starch, we have mechanical digestion, begins with the grinding from teeth. Salivary amylase is secreted by salivary gland to initiate starch breakdown. The second thing to happen, the bolus, or, bolus is just, what the food becomes. But the bolus, or, let's pretend we're talking about something with starch in it. But the food is going to go down the esophagus. So, and that movement is going to be because of peristalsis. So peristalsis, which is the contraction of longitudinal and circular smooth muscle, peristalsis is going to move that food down the esophagus and into the stomach, okay? What happens at the stomach? We have more mechanical digestion because the stomach, because of peristalsis, is going to move and churn that food. So mechanical digestion continues in the stomach as food is churned and mixed with digestive juices. No amylase is going to be in the stomach because the stomach is too acidic for amylase. And so amylase would end up probably denaturing. So no amylase in the stomach. Then what happens? The pancreas is going to synthesize and secrete the amylase into the small intestine. So then in the small intestine, the starch is going to be broken down into maltose. Okay? Maltose is broken down into glucose by maltase. If you wanted to add that, you don't necessarily have to. You don't need to know about maltase, but if you wanted to add it, you could. So maltose is broken down into glucose by maltase, and it's in the small intestine. Remember we talked about the membrane-bound enzymes. So maltase is an example of a membrane-bound enzyme. So that's all digestion. That's the first 2 parts. That's ingestion and digestion. Then you need to talk about absorption. So then we have the villi in the small intestine. So we know that the villi help increase the surface area of the small intestine. And the more surface area we have, the higher the rate of absorption. So that's the importance of the villi, okay? And so the glucose that's been broken down by the maltase is going to be absorbed into the epithelial cells via co-transport, which is a form of active transport, so it needs energy. And then it will get absorbed into the capillaries, into the bloodstream via facilitated diffusion. Okay, so this would be, you don't necessarily have to have this picture, but this would be a like very clear, concise, beautiful, fully described 8-mark question. Okay, so that is what they're expecting. There's a little bit extra with like the maltose or the maltase, but you guys might have seen the question. I think I might have given it to you before, but there's a question that's very, very similar, but instead of talking about starch, it talks about proteins. So you would basically need to do the same thing, but instead of starch, you would focus on the ingestion, digestion, and absorption of proteins. Okay? Love you, mean it, live, laugh, love. Goodbye.